Howdy everyone, and welcome to the next lesson on Romeo and Juliet. I'm going to be looking at most people's favourite scene, which is the fight scene. So get down the learning objective and complete the starter then. So the starter is, why might Romeo refuse to fight Juliet's cousin once he has married her? Pause the video to answer that. So why might Romeo refuse to fight Juliet's cousin once he has married her? Okay, so hopefully what you guys have come up with is that because of the tradition of being part of a family once you marry them, that would be the main reason that Romeo would refuse to fight Tybalt because he now sees him as part of his family, perhaps even feel an element of love towards him. So let's start then. This links to that starter activity then. Tybalt, the reason that I have to love thee doth much excuse the appertaining rage to such a greeting. So he's saying that the reason I love you, which obviously he can't talk about, the reason is that he's married Juliet. It's excusing the rage that he feels. He's angry at Tybalt, calling him a villain in this scene, which we'll read in just a second. He's angry at him, but he excuses it because of the love that he has for him due to being married to Juliet. What I'll do for each of these scenes is make sure you've got in the bottom right hand corner some of the words and the definitions of them. Okay? So let's get started then. Act 3, Scene 1, Tybalt, Romeo are in this scene, and also Mercutio and Benvolio, but I don't think I've included any Benvolio's lines. Okay? Tybalt. Romeo, the hate I bear thee can afford no better term than this. Thou art a villain. Tybalt. The reason that I have to love thee doth much excuse the appertaining rage to such a greeting. Villain am I none, therefore farewell. I see thou knowest me not. Boy, this shall not excuse the injuries that thou hast done me. Therefore turn and draw. I do protest I never injured thee, but love thee better than thou canst devise, till thou shalt know the reason of my love. And so, good Capulet, which name I tender as dearly as mine own, be satisfied. O calm, dishonourable, vile submission. So what's happened there is that Romeo has entered the scene and Tybalt's asked him to fight, but Romeo refuses. He gives up his weapon. In the film, it's obviously a gun, but in the play, it's a sword. He gives up his gun, and Mercutio says, "O calm, dishonourable, vile submission." Mercutio is a person who stands for honour, and he sees this as a surrender. He sees Romeo surrendering to Tybalt, to Capulet, and he calls it dishonourable because he doesn't respect Romeo's decision. And then the scene continues. Courage, man. So the hurt cannot be much. So after Mercutio has been stabbed, Romeo says to him, "Courage, man. The hurt cannot be much. No, 'tis not so deep as a well, nor so wide as a church door, but 'tis enough. 'Twill serve. Ask me tomorrow, and you shall find me a grave man. I am peppered, I warrant, for this world. A plague on both your houses. Zounds, a dog, a rat, a mouse, a cat, to scratch a man to death. A braggart, a rogue, a villain, that fights by the book of arithmetic. Why the devil came you between us? I was hurt under your arm. I thought all for the best. Help me into some house, Benvolio, or I shall faint. A plague on both your houses. They have made worms meat of me. I have it, and soundly too. Your houses." So Mercutio is giving his final speeches there and explaining to Romeo why he died, which is that he came between them. So Romeo stepped between Tybalt and Mercutio when Mercutio went to fight him, and because of that, Mercutio was stabbed. And now he's saying a plague on both your houses. He's basically saying, like, I hate both of your sides due to you causing my death. He has lots of exclamations there, which you can kind of dig into. Particularly the plague comments and the dog, a rat, a mouse, a cat, etc. He kind of lists these animals of things that chase, that like they go round and round in circles, and it's just a case of the strongest survive. Why the devil came you between us? He asks this rhetorical question. He's like so frustrated that Romeo got in the way. If he's going to give up, at least they have the duty to stay out of the way while he's fighting his case. Okay, so that's the second part of the scene, and then the third part is after Mercutio has died. Romeo goes after Tybalt. All right, so Now, Tybalt, take the villain back again that thou gavest me, for Mercutio's soul is but a little way above our heads. Stay for thine to keep him company. Either thou or I or both must go with him. Thou wretched boy that didst consort him here, shalt with him hence. This shall determine that. They fight, and then Tybalt falls, so he dies. And obviously, as you know, that Romeo has to disappear because he's been banished, and he can't return unless he's going to get murdered. So in this bit, then Romeo's decided to kill Tybalt, and he says, "Either thou or I or both must go with him." So he doesn't care about him dying himself, as long as Tybalt goes as well. Okay. All right, so some questions, some tasks that I wanted to complete then. There are three here. What causes the deaths of Tybalt and Mercutio? What is the climax, the highest point of tension of the scene, and why? And number three, does Romeo lose some of our sympathy in this scene? Why and why not? I'll read those again. What causes the deaths of Tybalt and Mercutio? What is the climax of the scene and why? And does Romeo, the most interesting question here, does Romeo lose some of our sympathy in this scene, and why not? Answer these in full sentences. I spent about 10 minutes answering these three questions. Really dig deep into the answers to them. Why did Tybalt and Mercutio die? What's the climax? And does Romeo lose some of our sympathy in this scene? Pause the video. Okay, so Tybalt then. Tybalt dies because, oh, well, we'll go Mercutio first. Mercutio dies because Romeo refuses to fight, and he steps in to kind of fight his corner. Mercutio then dies because Romeo steps in to kind of help, trying to stop the fighting. Tybalt dies because Romeo takes revenge. What is the climax of the scene and why? The climax of the scene is obviously Mercutio's death. Well, I suppose it could be, you could see them as two: the part where Mercutio dies and the part where Tybalt dies. However, I find the Mercutio speech a lot more compelling than Romeo's and Tybalt's in the final part. And does Romeo lose some of our sympathy in this scene? This is down to personal opinion. I would say yes, somewhat, because he doesn't have the bravery in him that to fight his own corner. And as soon as your friend dies, he lets the rage take over. Uh, so he's only powerful as and when his friends are attacked, which isn't really a productive way of going about your life, I suppose. Okay, so let's move on then. So we have Romeo the Submissive. Then, can you make a brainstorm of the three slides like this? I'll talk you through them as we go. So Romeo the Submissive. Put this in the middle of your sheet. Okay, so we have three quotations to look at. Number one, the reason that I have to love thee doth much excuse the appertaining rage. He's being submissive here, he's giving in, he's surrendering here because of Juliet. So you could focus on words like excuse, and you could focus on the fact that he kind of lets it go because he's married to Juliet. You could focus on the appertaining rage, the fact that he has this rage, the deserved rage inside of him, even though he doesn't have any intention of acting upon it. The second quotation, I do protest I never injured thee or you, but love you better than you can devise. So this phrase here, I never injured thee, he kind of sees himself as almost like the victim of Tybalt's rage. He's saying, I didn't hurt you, and I'm protesting. He's complaining because he didn't injure him, and I love thee better than thee canst devise. So he's saying that I love you more than you're even capable of loving. And the third quotation, good Capulet, which name I tender as dearly as mine own, be satisfied. He says, I tender, I have it, I give it. I give your name as, I take your name as seriously as I do mine own, and be satisfied. He wants him to stop. He wants him to avoid the fight that is about to ensue. So put these three quotations and then annotate off them what they suggest. And once we've done this, we're going to look at a model analysis. Okay, let's pause the video to annotate. Okay, let's look at this model analysis then. It's quite long. How does Shakespeare present Romeo in the opening of Act 3, Scene 1? You don't have to copy this, but look at the structure of it. Shakespeare uses Romeo to show that love can make a man more submissive. When Tybalt calls Romeo a villain, he replies with, The reason that I have to love thee doth much excuse the appertaining rage, showing that his love for Juliet excuses the anger that is caused by the insult. The noun rage is more exaggerated than anger because masculinity during the Elizabethan era, that's when Shakespeare was writing, would have encouraged Romeo to fight someone upon being insulted. You can see that his love has made him weaker as he speaks of this reason but does not share it due to his fear of losing his new wife. He then says, Good Capulet, would you name my tender as dearly as mine own be satisfied? This respect he is showing for Juliet, and tendering, he means accepting or offering, conveys how his love for Juliet is bridging the gap between the two families and their feud. Shakespeare is showing how love crosses boundaries and makes people more willing to move past their problems. His final line of the opening of the scene is, I do protest I never injured thee, but love thee better than thou canst devise. The metaphor of injure shows the nature of men at the time, that Romeo's mere presence in the Capulet home was viewed as a wound to their honour. The hyperbole, the exaggeration of his final line of loving him better than he can devise or create, presents Romeo's emotional superiority over Tybalt. He is capable of a greater depth of love than he is. Therefore, Shakespeare is representing the possibilities and challenges and challenging of love. That doesn't make sense. And the possibilities and challenges of love. It can cause rage and insults and complexities, but it can also attempt to bring people together. So what we've got there then is a detailed analysis of all three quotations, and you're going to be creating your own on the next line to the second. But the analysis here, how I've structured it, is I've explained the answer to the question, I've used a quotation, I've given a language feature, I've explained what that language feature suggests, and I've explained how the audience would feel and how what Shakespeare is trying to suggest. Okay, for each of the three quotations, and then a little bit of a summary at the bottom. You'll be creating your own thorough analysis, your own three-puzzle analysis of the three quotations on the next slide. So let's have a look. Okay, Romeo the Vengeful, make a new brainstorm. Number one, for Mercutio's soul is but a little way above our heads, staying for thine to keep him company. So Mercutio's soul is a little way above our heads. Now, depending on how religious you are, might determine if you think he's being metaphorical or he's being literal. So Mercutio's soul is only a little bit in the air. Okay, staying for thine to keep him company, staying for yours to keep him company. He's making a threat here, isn't he? He's making a threat as if Mercutio's soul is waiting for Tybalt's soul. What's interesting here is that he doesn't speak about Tybalt's soul going down, like down towards hell. He speaks of it as going upwards as well, because although he's being cruel and horrible, Tybalt, Romeo still sees him as honourable and worthy of heaven. Next. This shall determine that. He doesn't even use the phrases. He doesn't even use the word sword or the fight shall determine that. He says this shall determine that. He can't even get his words out properly because of the anger that he's got within him. And the last one, either thou or I or both must go with him. He doesn't really care. He wants to take revenge, and if he dies in the process, he doesn't care. He doesn't die, luckily. Obviously, the story would end. But he doesn't die, but he's willing to in order to get what he needs, which is revenge. So what I'd like you guys to do is I would like you to analyse these three quotations in the same way that this one did. So talk about all three quotations, making an analysis and making links to language features, deeper meanings, effects on the audience, Shakespeare's audience, and what Shakespeare is trying to suggest about revenge, about love, about honour, etc. Okay? So your task then. How does Shakespeare present Romeo at the end of Act 3, Scene 1? Okay? I recommend about 20-25 minutes to do this activity, 3 puzzles, 3 analyses of these 3 quotations. Okay? 20-25 minutes. Off you go, pause the video. Okay, next then. So we have Tybalt then. Let's have a look at Tybalt. Tybalt the aggressor. Okay, we've got a nice little gift there of him speaking to Romeo. And we have Romeo. The hate I bear thee can afford no better term than this. Thou art a villain. You are a villain. So he speaks here very aggressively to Romeo, and he says that he can't think of a better word, he can't afford a better word than the word villain. He sees him as a villain for coming into his house and betraying the privacy that he thinks the Capulets deserve. Next, shall not excuse the injuries that you have done to me. Therefore, turn and draw, pull out your sword. He says he wants to have a fight with him, but he doesn't just want to kill him on the spot. He wants a fair fight, which Romeo obviously doesn't fulfill. He speaks of injuries. He speaks very metaphorically of his injuries that have been done to him, even though obviously Romeo hasn't done any. But he sees this as a slight. He sees this as an insult to his honour and his family's honour because he entered his household when he met Juliet. Final one. Thou wretched boy, as in the GIF as well, that didst consort him here, shalt with him hence. So you pathetic boy, you did meet him here, and you shall with him hence. You'll go with him as well. You're going to die as well. So he's still continuing, even though he's scared, even though he ran away from Romeo, he's still putting up this front of being this aggressor, this angry, villainous character. Okay, so what I'd like you to do then is do another analysis, another 25-minute analysis of Tybalt and these quotations. So you should be able to dig real deep into some of the quotations here. For example, the verb afford, or the noun villain, or the noun injuries, or the verb consort, and the adjective wretched. So speak about these three quotations answering this question. How is Tybalt presented in Act 3, Scene 1? Pause the video, 20-25 minutes, off you go. Okay, let's move on then. Let's have a look at Mercutio. So Mercutio, Romeo's best friend. Oh, calm, dishonourable, vile submission. So he speaks with this triple of calm, dishonourable, and vile. He sees Romeo giving up as disgusting, as something dishonourable when he refuses to fight Tybalt. He sees it as a surrender as well. Ask me tomorrow, and you shall find me a grave man. Now, grave means serious. However, because he's just been stabbed, he's also making a bit of a joke here, a pun. You shall find me a grave man because he's going to die, and so even though he's on his deathbed, he's about to die. He doesn't care. He's willing to carry on making those jokes. A plague on both your houses. This metaphor, a plague on your houses. He wants both houses to suffer. They have made worms meat of me. Another metaphor. So he sees himself as being the victim, and is now that he's going to die, he's going to be consumed by worms. So what I'd like you to do is answer this question. How is Mercutio presented in Act 3, Scene 1? You'll notice we're doing a lot of analysis with this scene. It's the part where all of the pieces on the chessboard come together and they carry out several acts of aggression, hence the reason why we're spending so much time on it. So how is Mercutio presented in Act 3, Scene 1 using these three quotations? So, O calm, dishonourable, vile submission, ask me tomorrow and you shall find me a grave man. A plague on both your houses, and they have made worms meat of me. There were two metaphors in the last one. There was a pun and a metaphor in the second one, and there's a triple in the first one. Okay? Analyse these three quotations. What are the language features? What do they suggest? How do the audience react? And what are Shakespeare's intentions? Okay. Final task. How does Shakespeare wish the audience to feel about the men of the play after seeing Act 3, Scene 1? So we have just seen several men die because of their bravado, because of their power, because of their honour or lack of honour, and because of their villainous behaviour, but also their revenge, and also they're willing to fight for each other. So I want you to explain how Shakespeare wishes us to feel about the men. Whose side are we supposed to be on? Are we supposed to be on Mercutio's side because he takes the hit for Romeo? Are we supposed to be on Romeo's side because all he does is try to do the best for his wife and his family and the Capulets? Or are we supposed to be on Tybalt's side maybe because he's just fighting for the honour of his family? Or you could argue Benvolio for sitting on the fence. So tell me, how does Shakespeare wish us to feel about the men after Act 3, Scene 1? Giving reasons. Okay, pause the video, about 5-10 minutes, and this is your final activity. Okay, thanks guys, I'll see you in the next video. See you later.